Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth in the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case. The Eyes in the Forest. The forest was bright and warm. The sunlight dappled across the leaf-covered ground in a way that evoked images of autumn holiday, brochures, and children laughing. There was a slight breeze rustling the upper branches, but down at ground level, all it did was bring the warmth of the sun in from out in the meadows all around. For everyone not working, it was a weekend to head out and make the most of the last of summer before the cold settled in. It was, I thought, a terrible place for a murder scene. "All right, Andrews?" my boss asked as he came over. Despite the fair weather, he was still clutching a takeout cup of coffee like a lifeline, and I could smell the alcohol from whatever he'd been doing last night. "All right, sir. I didn't think you were on duty today." Judging by the state of Detective Matthews, neither had he. However reckless he was on his nights off, Matthews was a consummate professional out in the field when the public could see him. Tell me about it. But 4 bodies in 3 months. No one gets their Saturdays when that happens. Some of us didn't have many Saturdays anyway, but I only gave him a tight smile in response. It wasn't right to bitch about hours and shift patterns when there was a dead body in the vicinity. Another car pulled up into the cordoned off area, and Matthews turned to watch it. It wasn't a vehicle I recognized, but I wouldn't have considered myself an expert on the department's cars. Besides, 4 bodies in 3 months. This was when the top brass got called in, and all the specialists scraped up from wherever they usually lurked. Matthews was having the same thought. More goddamn people sticking their noses in, telling me what to do. He walked back over to the car park, still muttering, leaving me to my solo guard duty. The investigators would go over the area first. Then maybe I'd get called in to help sweep the area. Until then, my contribution to catching a murderer was to stand still and keep people away. Of course, to get to me, they'd have already had to get through 2 other police cordons. I was nothing more than window dressing at this stage. But the more serious the crime, the more window dressing the bosses wanted. Couldn't let the press take a photo of empty space now, could we? Whoever had just turned up seemed to causing something of a stir with the other detectives. They all had more sense than to start shouting. But I recognized the way Matthews had started pacing. A few words drifted across the forest to me, though I didn't get much other than tone. No one was happy about the new person turning up, and I wondered what sort of specialist would cause such a stink. Maybe it's our own Sherlock Holmes. I thought to myself with a snort. It would make the shift more interesting, at least. But there was no way that Sherlock Holmes would work with a modern policing system. All those deductions and assumptions, the evidence courts would be laughing themselves to death. The new arrival was coming my way. I wiped the smirk from my face and stood up a little straighter, staring dead ahead as I watched them out the corner of my eye. Smart suit, skinny glasses, slightly cropped tie, and far younger than I'd expected for a specialist. At a guess, I'd put the man at a few years older than me, early 30s or so, although he could just have had one of those faces that ages well. His height didn't help, and though the ground was uneven, he was about eye level with me when he stopped. "Officer Andrews?" he asked, scanning me up and down. I'd braced for this moment. Who doesn't love a woman in uniform? But there was nothing to his look. It was more like he was trying to read my name on my legs, rather than checking out any curve they may or may not have had. "Yes, sir." Even though he was nameless, anyone out of uniform at a crime scene was pretty much guaranteed to be my superior. Better safe than sorry. "Can you take me down to the crime scene, please? One moment, sir." I'd barely tapped the call button on my radio before Matthews started waving his arm at me and giving the thumbs up. I tried to nod back, though he didn't watch long enough to see. "Right this way, sir." I led the way through the trees to where the body had been found, all the while fighting down the urge to kick the leaves as I went. Precise placement wasn't worth preserving when the leaves were so light and likely to move naturally, but it was hardly very professional. We came round one particularly large tree, meant to keep the victim out of sight, we figured. And there she was. No name, no purse, no shoes, clothing torn. Despite the warm air, I shivered. There was no getting used to this bit. "Here, sir," I said. It was obvious, but it didn't feel right to just wave and go, "Ta-da!" Poor woman needed some respect in death, even if she didn't get any in life. "Thank you, Andrews. You can go back to your post now. Are you sure, sir?" Solo investigation. Seriously? And I hadn't even gotten the man's name, let alone his rank or speciality. But Matthews had waved me on. If this went wrong, I could pin the blame on him, right? No, that was childish. "I'm sure. Thank you." As he dismissed me, he knelt down by the body and started looking at it, leaving me to walk away. I turned back half a dozen times, but he didn't seem to be doing anything, just staring. Waiting, perhaps. But then what for? Me to leave? My stomach tied itself in knots, and I looked at the dead woman's face. I didn't like leaving her here alone with him. Rank left me with no option, though. I dragged my heavy feet back to where I'd been standing, and was grateful to see that Matthews had wandered closer again. "Sir?" I said as I came up behind him. "What's up?" he asked. Despite the coffee cup hanging empty in his fingers, he looked rougher than he had earlier. Whoever the stranger with the body was, he sure could rile people up. Am I good to leave him alone? "Sir?" "Only protocol and all," Matthew snorted. "Ha, protocol? Some fancy arse from God knows where rocks up, and suddenly we're ignoring it. Yeah, it's fine, Andrews. He's got special dispensation." Curiosity got the better of me. "How come?" "Because of his impeccable completion rate. Solved more crimes than half of our department by all accounts. So the sun shines from him, and we all have to bend over and worship. Damn it. If I knew we'd be standing around with our thumbs up our arses, I'd have gone and gotten another coffee." I bit back all my opinions on what that would do for the twitch under his eye, and watched as he walked away again. Curiosity was still burning inside me. Impeccable completion rate? What did that even mean? And if he worked alone, did that mean he had some secret technique for solving crimes? I headed back to my post, but when I got there, I checked over my shoulder. No one was watching, not that they had any reason to. All the detectives were huddled together, all complaining, judging by the way they folded their arms or put their hands on their hips. They really were quite a melodramatic lot. The other uniforms about were scanning the area, sorting paperwork, checking maps, milling about, trying to look useful. There was no telling when a camera could appear. I slipped past my spot and retraced my steps back to the body. There couldn't be some secret technique for solving crimes. So what exactly was that guy doing? I had to know. And I had to know that it wasn't anything dodgy. Even with clearance from the boss, I'd brought the man out here and I'd left him here. He was my responsibility. Between the crispy leaves and my full uniform, it was hard to sneak. But I did the best I could until I got to a nearby tree. From there, I could lean round and watch the guy work. It took me a few moments and lots of blinking before I registered what I was seeing. The man was crouched on the ground where I'd left him, but he wasn't looking at the woman. He was focused on the pair of squirrels sat across from him on the other side of the corpse. To add insult to injury, he was talking to them. So it wasn't an attack here. This was just a body dump. My shoulders slumped. A great detective, wonderful record, and his secret technique was explaining things to animals? My brother would talk out programming problems to his dog. But this was just ridiculous. At least, no one else saw my brother doing that. And at least he wasn't doing it for a murder inquiry. Yeah, the man knew her, was crying the whole time. I froze at the other voice. There was no way. Did he say anything? The detective asked. Yeah, the squirrel, replied. Kept apologizing saying it was an accident. I'm sorry, that sort of thing. And then what? He took her shoes, the other goddamn squirrel said. Then he ripped her shirt, rumpled her clothes and all. She was properly dressed before she got here. He did all that here. Anything else? Don't think so. That all you need? Yes. Thank you. That's most helpful. The detective smiled and nodded at the squirrels before they turned and scurried away. My eyes were dry from the non-blinking staring, and I ran a hand across my face. There was no way I just saw that. Had Matthews infected me with his hangover? The detective pulled out his notebook and jotted down some notes before he looked up and round the clearing. I only just ducked back behind the tree in time. Is there anyone else? He said, just loud enough to carry, but not enough to reach back to where the other officers were. Heaven forbid they see him talking to the animals. On cue, a mouse scurried up and perched on a branch sticking out of the leaves. Yes, it said. And what did you see? See? Not much. But they smelt the same. Her and the one who brought her. Exactly the same? Like they lived together? Just so. Thank you. Anything else? No. Don't see much, I'm afraid. No worries. Thank you for your help anyway. The mouse scurried away as the detective made more notes, and the last strand of my sanity snapped. I stormed out from my hiding space, oblivious to the fact I was marching through a crime scene. All right, what the hell is going on? I said. The detective jumped to his feet, guilty as though he'd killed the woman, before a carefully schooled expression took over. I am investigating this murder, officer. You should be back at your post. No, none of that. What the hell is happening? How the hell are the animals talking? And why the hell are you so calm about it? Miss, I can assure you. He cut off mid-sentence and stared at me as though I was the weird one in this scenario. Hang on? Talking? Don't pull that crap with me. I saw you taking notes. You heard them, but so did you. You heard the animals talking? Yes, but how? He ignored the anguish in my voice and just kept staring. I was halfway through, weighing up whether to just punch him, assaulting a superior, and how would I explain why, when he broke into huge grin. I hadn't realized how morose he'd looked before, and I blushed at the sheer childlike joy on his face. I've never met anyone else like this before, he whispered. Hey, prove it. Mouse, come back. The mouse scurried up again, though it shuffled away when it saw me. Yes? The detective spun to me and nodded. Go on, talk to it. I said. Would this count as playing along? Or was I losing my mind as well? For the first time in my life, I wanted nothing more than to be on guard duty. Hello? Mouse? Greetings, the mouse said with a little bow. I shook my head. I wasn't bowing to a mouse. Yes, fine. Greetings. Are we done now? I asked the detective. Because I am currently talking to a mouse, and I would like some explanations. One more thing, he said. Ask it about the weather. Are you for real right now? Just do it. I rolled my eyes. But academy training was hard to kick. Someone says jump. You ask how high. Or ask after the weather. How's the weather? I said to the mouse with a wild grin on my face. Fair, the mouse replied. The leaves are falling early this year, but the rain has stayed off for now. Great. The detective took a step towards me and peered at my face. What did he say? You heard what it said. No, you tell me. Repeat what the mouse said. Shaking my head at the stupidity of the statement, I did as I was told. The leaves are falling early, but the rain has stayed off for now. Is that it? Are we done with this madness now? You really did hear it. Yes, I told you that. Yes, I'm sorry. I just had to make sure that you weren't lying. All sense of decorum went out the window. Look, mate, of all the things I'm going to lie about, I can hear mice complain about the weather isn't one of them. The detective ran a hand across his hair and smiled sheepishly. Yeah, guess not. I'm sorry. Like I said, I've never met anyone else who can do this. I had to be sure, but you know, how? How are we hearing animals talk? No idea. I've never found any explanation or even a suggestion that it's happened before. Then how did I discover it? I used to do it as a kid, but then I figured it was just something wrong with my head. One day, I got fed up at a crime scene, saw a squirrel, and asked for help. And it led me right to where the stolen goods had been stashed. Insurance fraud. And I proved it in about 10 minutes. From there, it just kind of grew. So what, your Detective Inspector Doolittle? He laughed and looked even younger as years of secrets drifted away from him. Something like that, I guess. What happened here then? He looked down at the body, and the smile dropped. Accidental death. Deliberate dumping. She died in her home, I reckon. Maybe a fight. Maybe sheer unhappy chance. Her partner panicked, knew about all the murders out here, so came and dumped her here. Maybe he's got a record or something, but I've got a registration number for the car, so we can go and check it out. By the sounds of it, he's feeling guilty, so it shouldn't take long to push him to a confession. I had been nodding along till I fixated on one word. We? He looked back at me and blushed. I thought so. I mean, I could use a hand working all these cases, and you can work the same way as me. Hold on. You mean become a detective? Don't you want to? I mean, in truth, I hadn't thought about it until then. My eyes fell to the corpse again. How many things had she been planning to do, or put off doing? I had to swallow the lump out my throat before I could answer, though. All right, I'm in. Assuming you can sort it with the boss. The detective grinned at me. I have a lot of pull. I can figure something out. He stuck his hand out which I took. Detective Inspector Christopher Griffiths, Officer Iris Andrews. A pleasure to meet you, Iris. Now, let's go talk to a murderer, shall we? My dad's? A killer? Hey, I'm gonna be home just a little bit late tonight. I'm running by the library, I tell Mason through the phone. Mason's my boyfriend of 5 years on Tuesday. Okay, no worries. See you when you get home. Love you. Love you, I say, and hang up. Right now, I'm taking forensic classes, and I'm totally lost. You'd think it'd be easier, but you'd be mistaken. So, I'm on my way to get a forensics for dummy book. My mom says this is the right path for me, and I should stick with it though. She says, my dad would really proud too. He was killed when I was 2. He was shot. I get out of the car and start walking into the library. This library is probably the nicest ones you could come across. It's tall and futuristic looking, completely glass, and has this huge tree in front, like the Circle of Life tree from The Lion King. That's why I call it the Lion King Library. It's special. Mrs. Darcy, the head librarian, greets me. She's a funny little thing, fierce too. What are you looking for, doll? She asks. Forensics for dummies. Could you point me to the crime section, please? Ah, right around the corner, she answers, pointing. Thank you, Mrs. Darcy, I say, and walk towards the section. When I get to the shelves, there are hundreds and hundreds of books, some talking about mass killers and other talking about the victims. I run my fingers across the spines and look at all the titles. How to stop a killer. Wonder how promising that is. Another one says, Behind the Scenes of the FBI. That sounds interesting. I grab it and knock 3 books off the shelf, and it echoes. This is embarrassing. I grab the books I knock over and reach to out them on the shelf, but one catches my eye. Is that my dad's name? Is that him? On this book? I look at the title. I'm stopped in my tracks, and I can feel the color bleeding from my face. Inside the mind of the Carter Brooks, the killer we all know. What? I am holding the books in my hands, and I can't stop shaking. My dad's a killer? My breathing's gone heavy, and I can feel the hit tears running down my cheeks. I didn't know this. What? I'm in shock. My dad? A killer? I look at the back, and I see more pictures of him, and I go into a complete sob. My dad was a killer, and I find out this way? From a book that I knocked off a shelf? In a library in the middle of Utah? Should I look through it? I sit down with my back facing against the shelf. I open up to the first chapter. His drive. I put this down. I can't read this, but I owe it to myself, right? I pause and just stare at the book. This isn't real. It can't be. He died from a shooting. He was the victim. After 30 minutes of sitting here, flipping, and looking through the pages, I'm completely hurt. Why didn't I know any of this? I've learned he killed 20 people and was taken away from his family, us. And apparently, we meant everything to him. I need to call my mom. I get my phone and let her ring. Mom? I say. You can hear the hurt in my voice. I don't know how I'm going to tell her, but she knows. Why didn't she tell me? Honey, what happened? Mom, I'm at the library, and I've found his book about Dad. I struggle getting through the sentence. She gasps. What? Why didn't you tell me? How didn't I find out? Maddie, what does the book say? I haven't read a lot of it. Mom? Yeah? I want to come over, and I want you to tell me everything. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Dinner will be ready when you get here. I hang up. My hands still haven't stopped shaking. Should I really be mad about her not telling me? The guilt and hurt I would be feeling from knowing would have ruined me. I can't be mad, but I'm upset. I'm being calm about this. I'm not blowing up. But I should have known. At least some of it. Not all the details. I called Mason and let him know that I'll be home late. I told him my mom wanted me over for her church group. I can't tell him about this right now. Ciao. I pull into her driveway and sit in my car for a second. I'm bracing myself. I'm in shock right now. I know it will hit me tomorrow and hurt more. I get and walk up to her porch. I knock 3 times. She comes to the door immediately, and she has tear-stained cheeks. We can sit at the table. Did you bring the book? She says, leading me to her table. I nod. I'm saving my breath. I pull the book out of my purse and lay it out in front of her. Her eyes get glossy again. What do you want to know first? She asks. How did I not find out from anyone? Not on the news, family, close friends. And why? Money. Grandma paid everyone for you not to find out. She takes my hand. You have to understand, it was for you protecting. We didn't want you living with fear or hurt constantly. Were you going to tell me? Ever? How did you think I wasn't going to find out? You were going to find out at some point. I always knew that. Hate me for this. But I didn't want to have to tell you. I thought since it was 40 years ago, you wouldn't see things like this. She says, gestures to the book. Why did he do it? He was angry. So he killed people? He was angry. So he killed people? Did he hurt you? I add. She shakes her head. No, he never laid a hand on anyone he loved. What was wrong with him? What inside him made him wanna kill someone? It can't just be anger, Mom. I mean, I'm in my first semester for forensics, but I know that can't be it. Mom, I know you know. She looks down at her plate. We haven't even started eating yet. The food's getting cold. He had multiple personalities. 2. When he was angry, it triggered his even angrier ego. He would go on killing sprees, she says through tears. This isn't easy for her. I imagine this isn't something she wants to revisit. You accepted that? Did you try to get help for him? I had to accept it. He wasn't always like that. After his dad and mom died, that's when it happened. And I did try to get him help. He wouldn't let me do it for him, not even behind his back. Did he tell you when he was doing it? Never. It was always when I would visit it, family or friends, when I was out of town. And I wanted a divorce, even though I loved him more than anyone understood. But I knew that would make things worse in his head, so it never happened. I'm not mad at you, Mom, I say, looking up at her. I think she needs to hear that. You're not? And she tilts her head a little. Because I would be. No, I'm in shock right now. Everything feels numb, and Jay didn't really know him. We weren't close. I choke on my tears. But I thought he was the victim, not the guy behind the trigger. I know. I'm impressed on how calm you're reacting. And I'm sure this will all hit differently tomorrow. But you have to understand, knowing everything will make it harder to cope with. Now that you know, I think we should save the details. I know you came here for answers. When it's time, I can dish them to you, but not in one night. That's not right to you. She says, I know she's right. If I knew everything, who knows what my mindset would be, or what I would do. Let's eat, I say, and I look up at her. I change my mind. I don't want to know all this right now. It's too heavy. We finish dinner, and we clean up the dishes. Can I leave the book here? I don't want to return it, and I don't want to read it. I ask. Yeah, sure. You can leave it on that table. She answers. Thank you for telling me all this and letting me come over in the moment. I know it must be hard to revisit all of this. Of course, you had to know at some point. I'm glad you called me, though, she says, and I grab my keys off the coffee table. Maddie, don't brush this off, though. I know you're hurt and scared. I can tell. Don't move past it as fast as you can. She adds, I won't. I love you, Mom. I have to get back to Mason. I lean over and hug her goodbye, and I hold on for a couple seconds longer. She lets go, and I walk out, carefully shutting her door behind me. I sit in my car for a second. I can't wrap my head around any of this. My dad's a killer. My dad is a killer. They're all foreign words. On my drive home, I couldn't help but just cry the whole time. I took the long way home, so Mason didn't see the tear stains, hoping they would dowry in time. Hey, how was it? Mason asks when I walk in. It was good. My mom said hi, I say, putting my stuff down. You sure? You okay, babe? He says, pulling me into him. I will be, but I don't want to talk about it tonight. Another time, I say, looking up at him. Okay, the bed's made. You can go to bed if you want. I'll stay out here and give you space. Yeah, okay. He kisses the top of my head, and I go into our room. I don't take off my clothes and change. It's too much work right now. I crawl into bed, and my phone rings. I look over, and it's my mom. Hello, Maddie? Yeah, it's me. Okay. I don't know how this tiny iPad works. Is something wrong? No. I just wanted to say good night and wish you sweet dreams. It will be a heavy night. Oh, good night, Mom. I love you. I love you. And I hang up. At the end of today, this book completely changed me. It's a new part of me now. I know things I wish I didn't. The murderous twins. The McKellen twins felt the librarian's stinky breath brush against their nape. So they quickly slid their dirt and blood-stained hands under the table. Shut up, you two, hissed the librarian. Sorry, said Milo McKellen, with the fakest of smiles. The librarian stomped back to his dimly lit desk, where he resumed his scribbling on a notebook. Occasionally, he raised his bald head to survey the hall like a living security camera. Martin McKellen peeked under the table. A few droplets of blood had stained his jeans, and now it would be impossible for him, or rather, his mother, if she hadn't been gone, to wash them away. They would become foolproof evidence, marked forever on his favorite pair of pants. A pale moonlight cast long shadows over the library hall, where the McKellen twins, still soaking wet from the rain, had found shelter. They had sat on one of the long benches, their hands and arms covered in dirt and blood. And now they were arguing. Their disagreement kept on drawing the attention of the librarian, who scowled at the twins and scolded them whenever they spoke a little louder. See that corner over there? Martin asked Milo. Let's go talk there. He won't interrupt us. The twins tiptoed to a corner far from where the librarian sat, hoping to get more privacy. They were surrounded by books, as dusty as if no one had ever touched them except the person who had placed them there centuries prior. So, said Milo. What were we? The body, said Martin. Yes, the body. I think we should have buried it instead of letting it sink into the lake, Martin snorted. As if a hump of soil in the middle of the woods is something you see every day. Better than a dead woman in the trunk of her own car, if you ask me. What other options were there? I couldn't even think straight. Those damn blue lights. Well, it's no use discussing this now, said Milo. We got rid of her. Something hit the floor and echoed throughout the library hall. Martin peeped out. The librarian was kneeling near the bench where the twins were sitting earlier, and he was struggling to get back up. The ink from his fountain pen had bled in a large puddle onto the marble floor, and now the librarian was fumbling for a tissue to clean that mess with. Milo peeped too, and he said, He'll be busy for a while. Martin leaned against the book-filled shelves, and sighed. "We can't hide in a library forever, Milo. I know," he said. "But we've got to at least wait for the rain to stop so that we can hop on a train and leave." "Where were you thinking?" Martin asked. Milo shrugged. "I don't know. Canada?" Suddenly, a clap of thunder boomed in the night sky outside, and the library's doors burst open. Martin looked over at the two men who had just entered the building. They were wet, just like the twins were, but they wore blue uniforms, like police officers, said Martin in a quivering whisper. "There's two of them. What do we do?" Milo whispered back. Martin shook his head. "I have no idea," he thought. He was afraid to even think at this point. "They came looking for us," said Milo. "No doubt about that. Otherwise, what would two police officers do in a library after hours?" "Hush, Milo," said Martin. "Please, don't let us be caught." "Good evening," thundered a voice. It was one of the two men. The twins cocked their ears. "I'm Agent Phillips, and this is Agent Clifford. We're looking for a couple of young men, probably in their 20s, red-haired, pretty thin." The librarian did not answer, so the other police officer, Clifford, urged him. "Have you seen someone with this profile by chance?" Martin held his breath. He prayed the librarian didn't reveal where he and his brother were hiding. Second by second, a thick silence was filling up the atmosphere, like a cake rising in the oven. Except this oven was far too hot, and this cake was about to explode. "Avoid us any trouble, Mr. Librarian," said Agent Phillips. "Just tell us if you've seen them or not, and we won't bother you any longer." Martin pushed Milo back into the corner and flattened himself against the bookshelves in case their cover was about to be blown. The librarian cleared his throat and spoke. "No," he said. "I haven't seen them." Martin and Milo gasped as quietly as they could and peeped out from behind the bookshelves once again. The two police officers were looking at one another. Clifford's eyes became two narrow slits, two poison darts he was now aiming at the librarian. "Are you sure?" said the agent. "Sure," said the librarian, trying to sound more sure than he was. "Very well," said Agent Phillips, nudging at Clifford. "Sorry to have disturbed you. We'll leave you now." But Clifford turned and pointed at the bench where the twins were sitting earlier. Under it, there was a mess of paper tissues and ink. And, "Look," said Martin to his brother. "The blood is gone." Milo looked down at the blood on his hands, by now dry, and then over at the bench. "What blood, Martin?" "When I hid my hands under the table, I spilled blood everywhere, on my jeans, on the floor." Clifford's voice boomed once again. "What's that over there, Mr. Librarian?" Agent Phillips grabbed his colleague by his arm. "Let's stop it here, Ben. He says he hasn't seen them." Clifford broke free of Phillips' grip and fetched the heap of stained paper from the ground. He marched back to the librarian's desk, where the poor man was standing still, but frail, like a clay statue. Clifford unfolded one tissue and slammed it on the librarian's desk. It was stained with large blotches of blood. "What about this, Mr. Librarian?" Clifford scoffed. "Been dabbing the floor all night long, haven't you?" The librarian didn't move a muscle. He just stared at the stained tissue. "These kids have slaughtered their mother," Clifford roared. For a moment, all the books in the library seemed to have teetered, like there had been a severe but rapid earth tremor. "Clifford, calm down now," Agent Phillips commanded. He turned to the librarian. "Tell us the truth, sir. As you can see, this is pretty urgent." The librarian slowly pointed his index finger at the corner where the twins were hiding. Milo gulped, and Martin stopped breathing altogether. The two police officers looked at one another one last time. Agent Clifford pulled out 2 pairs of handcuffs, and Phillips led the way. When they reached the darkened corner, where the twins were supposed to be hiding, though, there were only rows of shelves full of dusty tomes to welcome them. The dark night. A shadow of a figure was running in the dark. All around were tall trees, and only a small fraction of the moon's rays got through the canopy. The ground was a black void, with no difference between the dirt and the tree roots. A pack of wolves howled in the distance. With every gust of wind, the tree branches and leaves banged and rustled like a toddler playing with pots and pans. Under all of that was a low mumble, rhythmic, like a drum cadence, but ghostly in origin. The figure trips. Eli. The scene quakes. Eli. The moon disappeared. Elijah. Blinding fluorescent light replaced the woods. 13-year-olds Eli and Tyler were sitting in the mall food court, eating dinner across from each other. Eli's heart was pounding in his ears, and his hands trembled. Tyler put her hands on his. "Eli, what did you see?" Eli repeatedly blinked back at her as the fog lifted from his head. "I don't really know." "Come on," she said, slinging on a side bag as she raised from her chair. "You can think about it on our way home. I don't want to miss the bus." Without a word, Eli cleaned up their table and carried the tray away. As soon as his hand was free, he reached for her hand. They walked away from the tables, with Tyler locking her arm from Eli's swinging. Not too many people were left in the mall. There were a few stragglers around the pop-up stands, but most were lacing their arms through jacket sleeves by the exits. However, 2 men, a twig-like one with close-to-the-head African curls, and a log-like one with slicked hair, mostly to one side, didn't fit in either group. They stood off the side, away from everyone else, surveilling, looking for something. Their cookies and cream vibe didn't make Tyler divert their path. She was right until they stepped into their way. "Excuse us, Tyler Woodlock and Elijah Krieger?" the twig one asked through a British accent. Tyler pulled Eli closer. "No, sorry," she answered, starting to walk around them, with her and Eli's fingers turning red. Government agents. The other man stopped them, flipping open his budget case. Miss Woodlock. The Brit slid closer as Tyler gave out a nervous laugh. She pulled it together with a devious smirk. All right, agents. She stepped closer. But one thing first. Yes, the man said, putting his budget back. Tyler gave the Brit, the fitter one, a stiff kick in the shin. With him on the floor and his partner stunned, she yelled, "Run, Eli," giving Eli a push start. Eli sprinted off, getting a head start as Tyler toppled over a supply case. He headed for the loading docks, a path Tyler forced him to memorize for an emergency like this. As ordered, he ran without looking back. He nearly ran off the truck port in his mindset. He jumped down. Falling on his hands, he looked like a frog. He couldn't find the strength to stand, but he walked, half crawled, to the rear of the building. Collapsing against the brick, he took his chance to look back. She wasn't there. He stayed twisted around the corner, waiting for Tyler. All of a sudden, bright light beamed onto him. Drawing Eli's attention, the voice called out, "Stay there!" They boomed like a drill sergeant. He clambered to his feet and did the total opposite as the voice commanded. A stampede of boots followed Eli as he jotted into the wooded area on the other side of the loading lane. The fall night grew darker as he was chased farther in the woods. With every gust of wind, the tree branches and leaves banged and rustled. Their movement shifted and blocked the moon as if in a game of peekaboo. This and the uneven ground made Eli bobble like a pinball. The voice rang out again. "Get him! Don't let him get away." It allured him to look back. A light show of flashlights was going on behind. Even with all the light, however, the people remained shadows. A gopher tunnel tripped Eli up a bit. As he looked up, a pair of amber eyes, low to the ground, stared at him from a few yards away. The progression of howls following the encounter made Eli run fast. He couldn't hear the boots anymore. He would turn his head a few degrees before forcing it straight. The last one sent him flying into the ground. Tyler peered over a row of bushes. Eli laid on the ground, with only his chest moving up and down. As soon as she raised from her position, two men came into view. One went to Eli's side, and the other pulled out a radio. Asset found, about 4 clicks due east of the loading dock. The radio guy looked around the perimeter as the second man searched Eli's pocket. Tyler fished around in her bag. In the dark, the inside of her bag was a void. She felt cold metal as more men appeared. The one left Eli's side. "The cards aren't here, sir." Eli let at a moan as he began to stir. "Bring him. We'll find out soon enough where they are." He turned and started the procession away. Radio and Pocket Man gave each other a glance before Pockets threw Eli over his shoulder. The remaining men followed. Tyler took her hand out of her back. She fell to her knees. with her hands on her face. As the first tears started falling, she wiped them away with her fists clenched. She ran back to the mall, heading towards the parking lot. Her head bubbled back and forth, looking at the cars and people. Losing her structure, she fell back on her knees. She started crying again, right before her ears perked up. Snapping her head around, she saw the two agents from inside. "We lost, ma'am," she heard the agent who threw his badge in her face. They were ready to run. A grin grew across her face. She spined back, with her attention being grabbed by the rear of the car she fell in front of. The license read, CA exempt 387690. She had seen enough of those when the police raided their Romani dwellings. The odds of that being their car, she didn't know. Not did she know the odds of them automatically unlocking it far enough away that she could climb into the trunk before they were close enough to see. The two agents and their unknown guest arrived at their motel on the outskirts of town almost an hour after Eli was taken. The building wasn't too big, just 2 rows with 8 or so doors each. Behind each were a single room and a bath. The agents went first. Tyler waited until she couldn't hear them anymore before pushing out the back row cushion. Sitting on the floor of the car, she watched as they entered a room with the number 6 on the door. She opened the door carefully so she wouldn't hit the next car. In the same manner, she closed it without a sound. She strategically stepped as she reached back into her bag. After peering into the room's window, she saw the 2 agents with their backs to the door. There seemed to be nothing but a wall in front of them. But that didn't bother Tyler. She walked right in and pulled her hand out of her bag before slamming the door shut. The agents jumped if shots had been fired. They found that they weren't too far off. Dropping their phone, they were face to face with a gun barrel. "Hello again, miss." "Woodlock," one agent said, through his British accent as they snuck for their weapons. "Don't patronize me," she said, cocking her gun. "Do you think you can pull yours before I shoot the both of you? I've already proved I have grace under pressure." They both bring their hands forward. "What do you want?" the other one asked. "Well, Agent Vincent Petrov, I'm thinking about a trade." Flaunting his arrogant British accent, he asked, "What would you have that we would?" Cutting him off, Tyler pulled out a deck of tarot cards. "Really, I might be a child, but I'm not an idiot." "That still doesn't answer my question," Vincent said. "I want Eli back." "Excuse me, even if I believe for a second you're not with the men who took him, you bring him back to me, and you get these no-so-meaningless cards, and we all live happily ever after." The agents gave each a glance. "Let me make this easier. You do this, or I shoot you and go on my merry way." Eli was groggy, teetering between awake and asleep for the car ride, though no one could tell through the blindfold, nor from his position in the trunk. They had tried his wrists and ankles to stop the little fight he had in him. No kicking, no hitting, no running. More helpless than he was without Tyler. He was asleep when the car stopped, but was jarred awake when one of the men yanked him out. Being bobbled around, his face was red and breathed deeply, trying to keep dinner in. The only relief came when he was dropped to the floor. After the bang of the door, Eli was left to wait once more in the dark. He pulled at his ropes, only stopping when the burning turned into paper-cut sensations. No closer to freedom, he crumbled, stopped straining, stopped fighting, stopped holding it together. Back at the motel, Tyler sat crisscrossed on the first bed from the door, yanking her locket back and forth on its chain. She stared at the agents that sat on the other side of the room. She tried to hear what they were saying, but they put the same effort into the opposite. "What are we going to do, Miles?" Vincent asked. "Play the game. Easier said than done. We know when, where, and a fair idea of by who. The who is what scares me. I would be more scared of the lass if we don't." "I agree with Agent Walker." A woman, dressed in a white skirt suit with her dark hair in a spiral braid, said just inside the room. "Ms. Isles?" Vincent jumped out of his seat. Tyler did the same. She stared at the woman, jotting a glance at the door, then back. No one heard the door open or closed. "Hello, miss." "Woodlock," Ms. Isles said, raising her hand. "Hi," Tyler said, more like a question than snipe, without shaking her hand. "Well, do you want the good news or the bad news?" "Good would be best," Vincent toddled. Isles looked at Tyler. "Find the boy. Bring him back. Finish your original mission," she said through a smile. She began to walk away. She already had her hand on the doorknob before any of them stopped her. "What about the bad news?" Miles shouted. "Work with her, Walker. Work with her," she said, leaving before and without argument. Eli had no idea how long he was asleep for, but when he opened his eyes, he was met with a blinding light. He stretched out to find his legs and arms unbound. Panicked and joyed, he shuddered and jostled. He missed the hand on the wrist. A shadow eclipsed the bright light. "Do you mind not moving?" The voice sounded familiar. With the light masked, Eli could start to see the room. First, the man kneeling in front of him, graying hair, flannel button-up shirt, and placid blue eyes. Then small red spots on the gray cement floor. And last, white bandage roll, some on his right wrist, and the man wrapping more onto his left. "I think you've bled enough on my floor for today," the man said, finishing his work. "Your floor? Don't be put off by the casual dress. I'm the boss here, and that's why I can offer you this. You answer all my questions, and you can go home to your gypsy family, to your sweet wife, Tyler, without any more harm." "What do you want to know?" Eli asked as he sat up. "Why don't we start with something simple? Why did you run away from me at the loading docks? said the man who blared a flashlight in Eli's eyes earlier that night. Vincent sat at the small two-person table, glaring at a street map and a calculator. "How is it going, Vince?" Miles asked, leaning over Vincent's shoulder. "Not great." Knowing that they took Elijah 75 minutes ago, and assuming they stayed within 5 miles per hour of the speed limit, they can be anywhere within and around 50 miles away from the mall. That's a big area. You don't know the half of it. "Miss Woodlock." "Tyler!" she yelled at him. "My name's Tyler." "Tyler." He put his hands up halfway. "Can you give us anything? Car model? Direction? Anything?" "I was a little busy, trying not to get caught myself. Trying to find you fools. If we try to search all of this..." Vincent pulled Miles closer and lowered his voice. "We won't get to him in time." "Don't talk like that," Tyler yelled, with a little cry behind it. "You start talking like that, and things will end that way." She fell back onto the bed, with her hands on her face. Miles glared down at Vincent, with his arms crossed. He kept that position as he walked over to the bed. Sitting next to her, he put his arm around her, with an air bubble between them. "Thanks," she said, whipping her hands out from her face. "It's getting late. Why don't you rest for a bit? We don't want our sharpshooter's eyes heavy. I've been one for the last 10 years. But..." She paused, bringing up her watch on her right wrist. "Watch," she continued, jumped off the bed. "What?" Miles followed her towards Vincent. "Watch." She started searching her bag. "I got Eli a watch for our first anniversary. He never takes it off." She presented the watch's instructions. "And it has GPS." "Anniversary?" they asked. During their time together, the man asked Eli an array of questions. Most about trivial personal things to get Eli relaxed and uncoil from his balled-up position. It was working, too. He was as relaxed as if he was home. His eyes glassed over as the questions droned on. The room faded away. A dark place appeared. A spotlight shines on the center. A glint of metal moved in from the bottom. A gun, revolver, a white hand, a flannel sleeve. The hand snapped the bullet holder back into the gun. It aimed. Destroying the image, the shot fired caused Eli to scream and hold his ear. His ears were still ringing when the man tried to calm him down. Eli saw what he expected was on his own face, on the man's. The man removed Eli's hands. His mouth moved, but Eli couldn't hear it. He yanked himself away. "Why are you asking me all these questions? What do you want?" The man had a blank face. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. After straightening his shirt, he said, "You have something that belongs to me." "I don't have anything." Eli shuddered. "Not now, but..." He exhaled heavily through his nose. "Tyler gave you something. A set of tarot cards." "I don't know where they are," he stuttered. "Well, it's the last question you have to answer, so give it a good thought. They could be anywhere. In the woods where you chased, back in the mall where the other two did. "With," he said, trying to put the brakes in his mouth. "Sir, you know where they are." No, I don't." "Yes, you do." He pulled a gun from his back waistband. "Tell me." Eli's mouth opened, but the only crashing noises came. The sound made both of them jot their attention towards the door. The man gritted his teeth. The other two. Staring down at his gun, he weighed it in his hand before bringing it down on Eli's head. Eli fell to the floor again. The last thing he saw before the backs of his eyelids was the man's black shoes walking out the door. The black gave way to wisps, at first merging into cacti and sand. They whirled by through the view from a car window. Tyler sat on the opposite side, smiling back. In the front seat sat Miles and Vincent. The whole picture felt loving and had a dream-like glow. It faded into a face full of fabric. Before he could freak out like his earlier ones, a hand touched his shoulder. "You're all right now. You're safe," Tyler cooed. In a quick movement, Eli raised to hug her, nearly bringing them to the floor. Regaining her structure, she hugged back. In their embrace, Eli missed Miles and Vincent standing off to the side, smiling down at them. The big crime investigators at the Gustav Adolf Lutheran Church in New Sweden, Maine. In 2003, a mass poisoning there sickened more than a dozen congregants, killing one. Credit: Joel Page, Associated Press, by The New York Times, April 7th, 2020. All true crime stories start as crime reporting, often in the daily newspaper. Before the narrative is shaped for your streaming device, earbuds, or bookshelf, the facts are gathered by a journalist. What happened? Where and when? Who is the victim? And do the police know who did it? Any journalist who has covered crime has stories they can't shake. These tales can be harrowing, bizarre, or even, in rare circumstances, oddly inspirational. We asked our journalists to share the ones they still think about, even decades later. Ellen, Barry, Boston, bureau chief. Someone put arsenic in the coffee after a church service in New Sweden, Maine, sickening several congregants and killing one. I was sent up there in 2003 by the Boston Globe to the far reaches of Aroostook County. It was both quaint and horrific. Someone trying to kill their neighbors. Eventually, it emerged that one of the ushers had done it as revenge for losing a theological battle. As the population in that area drained away, two small Lutheran churches were consolidated into one. Identical to outsiders, the two churches had what was for them a deeply significant doctrinal difference. In one, the priest faced the congregation when blessing the host. In the other, the priest faced the altar. The poisoner had lost that battle. He ultimately killed himself. It was a grim story about the dilemmas of those stretches of our country that are losing population, having to let go of their particular identity, have a true crime story to share? Tell us about the crime that haunts your memory. Feb. 27, 2020. Linda Richardson, Senior Staff Editor. Travel. Eddie Brown began running in a snake-infested Florida swamp in 1952. In the 44 years after he escaped from a chain gang while serving a robbery sentence, Mr. Brown worked, raised children, and lived quietly in East New York. But he was always shadowed by the gnawing fear that his past would catch up with him. I covered his case as a Metro reporter in 1996. But lately, I've been thinking a lot about the chain gang fugitive, having recently read about the racial horrors of the Jim Crow South in Colson Whitehead's The Nickel Boys. Eddie Brown's past resurfaced after he was in a minor car accident, and the police ran a routine check that showed he was wanted in Florida. He was taken away in handcuffs. Florida initially requested his extradition, and New York law enforcement officials began the proceedings. Mr. Brown spent nearly 40 days in the Brooklyn House of Detention before he was released on $1,000 bail. It was an immensely satisfying moment to see him walk out of the courthouse, finally a free man, as a sea of news photographers with flashing cameras and reporters, more than I've ever seen, awaited him. Dig deeper into the moment. Special offer. Subscribe for $1 a week. Dan Barry, domestic correspondent. When I worked for the Providence Journal many years ago, I often wrote about the mobsters who were very much present in that Rhode Island city. You knew that this was Social Club, this was Baby Shanks's cafe, and this was the place where Old Man, the boss, used to run everything. You also knew that two men connected to a certain restaurant had made a guy named Joe Onions disappear long ago, but had never revealed where they had laid him to rest. Fast forward to 2008. One of the men is dead, and the other is dying. The police pick him up on a nickel and dime charge and ask for the umpteenth time, where is Joe Onions buried? To their shock, he agrees to spill. I have strong ties still to the state, and when I heard about this case, it sounded like a short story about an old wise guy who decides to go out by doing the right thing. I had to write it. Nicholas, domestic correspondent, investigations. The century-old department store stands 8 stories tall, but looms even larger in the German consciousness. A short walk from the old New York Times bureau where I worked in West Berlin, the luxurious shopping destination is a symbol both of Berlin's roaring 20s and the country's post-war economic miracle. So when I learned that there had been a jewelry heist, with the thieves caught on the surveillance camera, lowering themselves into the store on a rope ladder, evading the motion detectors, and making off with millions of dollars worth of jewels. I knew it was a big crime story on the biggest stage. My contacts in the Berlin police department told me that the thieves had made just one mistake, leaving behind a glove at the scene with DNA inside. A good story needs a twist, but a great story boasts two. The DNA evidence led not to a single suspect, but a pair, identical twins, identified as 27-year-old Hassan and Abbas O. The German justice system couldn't lock them both up, and each could claim the other did it. So, they walked. It may not have been the perfect crime, but it was a pretty sweet alibi. Alan Reporter. Metro. A Bronx man spent 25 years in prison for a rape he did not commit. Why? Because a witness accidentally took the police to the wrong apartment, one not 16, and the police arrested and prosecuted the man they found there. Fernandez, Houston, Bureau Chief. One night in 2006, a police officer in the Bronx responds to a fight at a White Castle. He rolls up and sees a man with a gun kneeling over another man in the parking lot. He tells the gunman to drop the weapon, but the gunman doesn't respond. The officer opens fire, and the gunman is critically wounded and later dies. The gunman, it turns out, was a fellow officer, an off-duty Bronx policeman who was intoxicated and had just been beaten up by a group of guys at the White Castle. It's the mistaken identity that gets me. You can freeze frame the shooting as the bullets in the air and study it. There are worlds upon worlds of fate, mystery, and human connection at play. These two officers worked at station houses nearly 2 miles apart, and yet here they were, drawn together in a few tense, confusing seconds in a fast food parking lot. As I wrote, in this city, people live their whole lives separated by such short distances and never once cross paths. I don't think the officer was ever prosecuted for the shooting. I think it was ruled a justified shooting. But how does a cop live with a thing like that and move on? Yes, 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 yes. Armando, Deputy Editorial Director, Syndication. Hi, 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 hi. This unsolved case, in which 7 people, including children, were shot point blank during a robbery inside a bowling alley, has been a cloud over a small New Mexico city near the Mexican border for decades. 4 of the victims were killed. A 12-year-old victim, shot in the head, managed to call 911. And no arrests have ever been made. I grew up in the area, and it has been a source of sorrow and local mythology ever since it happened in 1990. In fact, the brutality of this crime over a few $1,000s, the massive law enforcement response, and the fact that no credible witnesses have ever come forward to identify suspects, all we want to hear about a crime that haunts you, a story that shook you, your town, or community, and possibly changed lives. We are starting a project that will deeply examine crimes around the United States. The kinds of stories that too often go untold or have largely been forgotten. The crimes can be solved or unsolved, decades in the past or more recent. The crime may have been violent or involved financial or political wrongdoings. It may have implicated law enforcement or corporations. We're particularly interested in stories that may have gotten local coverage or not, but didn't rise to national consciousness. Rainer Kelly's Murder Soulmate. People are fools. This was a thought he'd held on to since he was a boy, and it had held true for his entire life till that point. Even as Rainer drove on the roads of his favorite mountain range, he could only think back to the sorts who proved it to him. Those sorts of people he couldn't even be angry at. The kind of idiots that got themselves lost in his favorite places. It wasn't as if he cared for any particular demographic. He liked to hurt them more if they were pretty, more so if they were tame. But he was always one for opportunity. That might have been how he managed his body count. Serial killers without a known type are harder to catch, as far as he'd heard. Though, considering how high the body counts were for easier cases, he had his reservations. It could have been how he killed. While he wasn't exactly messy, he didn't try to be fancy with his targets. He'd done it before. Long, drawn moments with strangers in discreet, abandoned places. But when all was said and done, he was careful. That, and he was a fairly big guy. He was a hard man to escape. Made his marks all the more foolish for trusting him. It wasn't all that late when he happened upon his next mark. A young man, inching to it, really, with a lovely mop of hair just by the side of the road. "Hello, sir. I kinda sprained my ankle. Could you drive me to a gas station or something?" The kid asked softly. He looked embarrassed by the entire situation. Rainer liked that, so he opened his passenger door for him. The kid was asking, after all. He watched as the kid arranged himself on the passenger side, careful to buckle himself in. The kid seemed a mite more cautious now, considering his ankle. Rainer started after that, taking his merry time since the kid wasn't worrying directions. "So, what had you so far out?" Rainer asked with a sideways glance. The kid had been looking out the window, contemplating something, before glancing over to him. "Oh, nothing much, just the scenery," the boy said. "Is it all right if I do some writing here?" "I don't exactly have a charging setup," Rainer said, still playing the Samaritan. The kid took out a small journal. "Sorry to disappoint. I'm a bit old school," he said, trying to look cool. He kinda did, if Rainer were at all honest. Rainer could have driven with his eyes closed, but he still only looked over occasionally, seeing the kid scribble away on a relatively clean page in his book. "So, what do you like to write about?" "Bodies." "Oh, what kind of bodies?" he asked innocuously. "Anybody, anything." "Oh," he said, hoping for something more specific. It was well enough that the kid was mostly quiet after that. Rainer wasn't so over-curious of this next body. Couldn't be that clever this far out. Didn't stop him from being a bit disappointed with the answer, what they were, rather than the state they were in. He was still a bit mesmerized with the kid, scratching away on a half-empty journal he was never gonna fill. He wondered, like any man oughta, how the kid managed to see anything past his fringe. But it seemed weird to impose on something like that. That mop would be safe enough to cut when the kid was dead, if he was really in the mood for a trophy. Beyond that, it was the kinda night he wanted to take slowly. The kid was marked for it. Rainer liked to take it slow sometimes. I still gotta wonder what got you out so late. I thought I told you. Oh, whatever, the kid whispered, before asking, is it all right to say I've got terrible friends? Well, hey, we've all been in bad crowds before, Rainer stated. He liked getting him out of the shell before the fun. Yeah, Rainer couldn't see where the kid was looking. I don't think I caught your name. No, you didn't. Be fair, I didn't catch yours either. Ah, I'm Callum. Let me guess. Your mom had a thing for soap operas? No, saints, actually, the kid corrected with a laugh. My mom had a thing for cryptids. Rainer paused at the non sequitur, thinking over what to say. He could be honest, tell the kid his name, hear that begging catch on his throat later. Or he could lie, make him guess. It won't matter if I don't know your real name, you know, the kid said, catching his apprehension. Rainer stopped to think about where they were, where the closest safe house was, before saying, no, I was just surprised. I'm Rainer Kelly. Because he liked the kid's voice. The kid was quiet after that, the only noise from the passenger side being the press of pencil to paper, the sound of a zipper. Then, as if struck by something, he felt a sharp presence through his leg, reacting with a hit to the face, which knocked the kid out. Without much thought as to the proper thing to do, Rainer pulled the knife out. Rainer felt his own hot blood flow from his thigh, and all he could think was, the little maniac stabbed me. He looked down at his leg, realizing that the kid, with all the luck, nicked something proper. He stole the kid's belt, since he was still out, and made a tourniquet. Frazzled by the entire ordeal, he decided to push the kid out the passenger side and step it to the nearest hospital. A night held up in the emergency room was an interesting addition to his night, just as the injury to his femoral artery was. It was a lucky break not dying from it, but the kid was still out there. He'd done something foolish, and while Rainer wasn't especially scared of getting caught, he didn't like being blindsided like that. It would be a while after that before he'd think of it again. When he cleaned out his car, Rainer, having killed on the go before, knew that anything could drop from a body. Licenses, gum, IDs, and phones were some of the most incriminating. So he really couldn't afford to keep a dirty car. That's when he found the journal, the last thing the kid dropped before trying to get the drop on him. It was a small, leather-bound notebook, and while at once familiar in the light of day, he could see the character of its use. Kid was careful closing it before pulling that nonsense. And while his car had been a mess for a while, the pages were mostly clean. He flipped through, looking for IDs that might incriminate. And when he couldn't find any, he thought to throw it away, even without something concrete. The book was filled with the kid's writings, and being by hand, his composition and identity could be ascertained. It was the kinda circumstantial evidence detectives and juries ate up. With the car no longer in disarray, he could throw it out, forget about the one night where the tables almost turned. Altogether again, he thought of the journal, of his hands and head. This was all he was gonna have of that. And for once, amongst the dark thoughts and bad memories, he wanted to keep it. It was only then did he read it. Page upon page of poetry. And though it was the simplest thing it could be, he was infatuated with it. The first page, dated a decade before, I am beauty. I am soft, a crooked rumble to strange human love. She wonders fondly, where are you, dear? While I am dry and rotting here, I am claws. I am fear, a hissing mess to his cruel intent. I am flesh. I am bones. The kid was killing cats back then, writing poetry about it even. Raynor was taken back to his first experiments, neighborhood pets, and the like he dispatched out of curiosity. Though the kid never wrote his age or full name in any of them, he could tell that it was quite a bit more than poetry. It was something he'd never thought to do. Write about them with this intense distance. Some were short and recent. I am small. I am buzzing. My life is sweet. My stripes are fuzzy. Inside, I'm soft. My stingers not. None are things the dead can flaunt. Before he knew it, he felt familiar with the kid, like he was more than a liability, as close as a journal scratched halfway through. It really was anything, anybody, to him. I am lovely. I am strong. My tendons were cut. My fat is gone, lost beneath 2 or 3 feet. There are no feelings the dead get to keep. Raynor thinks, reading through Callum's poetry book, about that night and how it went. Every little lie that he didn't bother telling. How ready he was after saying his name. He wonders, what'll I do when I'm on the prowl again? Hungry for new pretty faces. How long before he thinks about the kid as just a liability again, and not the one that got away?